Hello everybody, this video is going to show you the answers to Unit 3 Lesson 1 Distance Learning Assignment, Using Light to Study the Stars. Now the goal of this assignment was to apply some of the things we've already learned to this interesting idea that you can identify elements coming out of the stars just by the light that they emit. You've already completed this assignment. Some of you did this right, some of you did this wrong. After viewing this video, if you know that you did it wrong, please go back and correct your assignment and resubmit it so that when I go to grade this, you actually get a good grade on this thing. So first thing is, we got to make sure that we are understanding that this electromagnetic spectrum is a very, very wide range. Most of this stuff we cannot see. The only range that is visible to us is represented by this little box right here, and that box should remind you of something. It is a rainbow of color, and this is the level of UV or of visible light that is actually perceptible by humans and most animals on planet Earth. There are some animals that we think that can see into the infrared realm, and there are some animals that we think we might be able to see into the ultraviolet realm, but that is a pretty rare adaptation. In class, we went through and looked at sunlight. As we looked at sunlight carefully, not looking directly at it, we saw that sunlight contains all the component colors of the rainbow. It's going to include all colors in a fairly equal distribution. This happens because the sun is a thermal body. It is releasing light because of heat. It's like fire or a red hot ember or a heating element on a stove. These things glow because of how hot they are, and when that happens, they emit all colors of visible light. Now, artificial light that's generated not from heat but from actual illumination elements does not emit all the colors. And we used the example of fluorescent light in class, and we saw that mainly this is releasing red, green, and blue. Now these two light sources are similar in that they include both red, green, and blue, but they are different in that sunlight contains extra wavelengths. It contains orange, yellow, and purple. In addition to that, sunlight also is going to contain infrared wavelengths, and we know that because it gives us heat. And it's also going to contain UV. And UV is the one that is most dangerous because it is the highest energy of light. Now you'll notice that when we look at a spectral emission, there are dark areas in between that do not contain anything. These dark areas show us that that light source is not emitting that wavelength of light, and there's no energy at that level of wavelength. So you could think of this as that light does not transmit that range of energy. That's another way to describe it. After that, we looked at three different light sources. We called them light source 1, light source 2, and light source 3. Some classes had more time than others for this, and to make this equitable for everybody, I put 3 images on your agenda. I cropped these images and inserted them here into this key to show you guys what they should have looked like if you zoomed in and just focused on the spectral emission. This at the bottom is what color the light actually showed to the naked eye. And then above it, in this range, was the spectral emission for that light. So this first one gave us a faint pink type of light. And when it broke down into its spectral emission, it gave us pretty much red at the top, some orangish yellow in between, and then some blue, maybe even into the purple down at the bottom. Light source 2 was this really kind of light blue color, electric light blue. And that one broke down into three different bars: purple, green, and blue. And light source 3, which is a very, very vibrant pink, almost neon, gave us a lot of different lines. If we looked carefully at them, we'd see that there was purple, there was some blue/green, almost like a teal color or an indigo. And then it gave us very, very dark red emissions. Now you can kind of see some orange in there, but that's happening because those two types of lights are overlapping and changing the color. Now we know that these three different light sources are different because they're emitting different wavelengths of light, and each has a different spectra pattern. I attempted to provide you a chart so that you could try to identify these elements, and I got to admit that this was not super easy. One of the reasons for this is that our super awesome spectroscope glasses are not the highest quality spectroscopes you can get. And so some of these things were difficult to break down. Now, the elements that were definitely in those tubes that I showed you in class were argon, mercury, and hydrogen. And if we look over here, that's what argon should have looked like when we looked at it through a spectroscope. Now, I think we can admit that that's not necessarily what we got. Mercury was a little bit closer. It should have given us kind of an orangey color, a green, and a purple. The green's kind of on that blue-green level. And then lastly, hydrogen should have given us very clear red, very clear blue, and very clear purple. Now, this should match exactly if we had a high quality spectroscope that we were using, but in our case, it did not. So for the most part, we had to guess on these. It's okay if you got most of these wrong. It's just kind of for fun anyways. Now, this is a similar process to how we determine which type of elements are in stars. The spectroscopes used for that are much more precise. We talked about thermonuclear fission and thermonuclear fusion last week, and in this process, energy is released. When that energy is released, some of that comes off as heat, but others of it is absorbed by the atoms in the stars and they become excited. Those excited elements, those atoms, have their electrons jump from level to level, and as they fall back down into their original level, they give off they give off light. And as they give off light, we can actually measure that light and see the wavelength and eventually get some data. This ends up being the fingerprint for that element. This last section was some practice. And this shows us the type of data that comes from the spectroscopes used by scientists to measure stars. Instead of seeing colors, again, this is more spaced out on wavelength. And so down here, this might be short wavelength. And over here, this might be long wavelength. And this is a more accurate way of measuring what light is coming out of there. The goal here was to play a matching game with our unknown and all of our knowns up here. Basically, we're looking for patterns. So in our unknown, we have a band very early on that seems to match perfectly to to helium, He. So we're going to investigate He a little bit more closely and see if things match up. Sure enough, the next band matches. And sure enough, the next band after that matches. And sure enough, the next band after that matches. And so does the next one. And so does the next one. This is a perfect match to helium. The problem is that we have extra things in our unknown. We still have a band here, a band here, a band here, and a band here that's not explained by helium. You may notice that this band matches perfectly to hydrogen. So let's run with that. If we scroll down here, the next band for hydrogen is here, and sure enough, we have one in our unknown. We also have matches here and here. This indicates to us that our unknown is going to contain hydrogen and helium. The reason why we know it doesn't contain anything else is because there's no bars left in our unknown. We've matched every single bar of our unknown to specific elements. We don't have any left. So, question 3 is about stars. Young stars contain a large amount of hydrogen and a small amount of helium and other elements. Could this be the spectrum of a young star? Why or why not? It has the hydrogen for sure, and it definitely has the helium. But we don't see any other elements showing up in this spectrum, so it's going to be difficult to say that this for sure is the spectrum of a star. And it says here that it's possible that it can contain other elements. So for us, it's kind of inconclusive. Now here we're going to do something similar, except that we're going to have a lot more unknowns. So this is just additional practice. So we're going to look at sample W first. Unknown W is right here. Let's start all the way to the left and work our way across to the right. So this first line matches. This first line matches. So does this one. And this one. And this one. We have a match here. And a match here. So it looks like we have C, D in our sample. We have some additional lines here. Let's see what else we could find. We only have 2 lines that didn't match up with CD, and that's these 2. They match up perfectly with sodium. So we're going to list sodium here. See how this goes? Sample X. And so on and so forth. Now hopefully that helps you guys figure this out. I want to let you guys do the rest of those samples on your own. I do want to talk to you about this last question though, because this one is kind of challenging. So the last step here is to connect this back to electron transition. Electron transition means moving up and down with regards to energy level. Moving from different levels releases different wavelengths. So because electrons aren't the same in every element, no two elements will emit the same spectrum. So because the electrons are unique to each element, the spectrum that they release with regards to the light that they give off as they fall back down from an excited state are going to be unique as well. All right, hopefully that gives you guys enough to do some corrections on this. If you want to correct this, do this over the weekend and get this to me by next week before I have a chance to grade these assignments. Thanks, everybody. I hope that was helpful.